I don't agree with why Dr. Peterson has been asked to stop abusing students. It's not correct that there is such a thing as biological sex. My physical, emotional life and livelihood is at risk from being here.
The issue with the law is quite straightforward. The government is requiring us to use certain language. That's not the same as not using certain language. And it's a line, and this is the fundamental issue. This is maybe the fundamental issue. That's a line we should not cross. We should not allow the government to decide which words we're allowed to use. It's a mistake. And it's a mistake that strikes right at the heart of free speech. And the thing about free speech is that it's not the right to criticize your leaders, which is what people usually characterize it as. Is freedom of speech is freedom to engage in the processes that we use to formulate the problems in our society, to generate solutions to them and reach a consensus. It's actually a mechanism. It's not just another value. And you should put constraints on free speech with the most extreme caution because you interfere with people's ability to think and communicate.
I think for me, one of the things that I felt anxious about coming in, and I'm still puzzling over, why this issue? Why this issue? I don't see the connections that Jordan is making. And as a person who identifies as transgender, it's very, very confusing that this is somehow up for discussion.
You saw the tape at the beginning of the program I mean, he tried to give a speech at a university campus and was really quite mercilessly shouted down.
Peterson! Okay.
And that would be one of the places where Jordan and I would have some common ground in that there has been a trend in some ways for people to allow no platforming, and this person's views are objectionable and we don't want them to come on the campus.
What do you think of that?
I think it's probably best not discussed in the context of someone's personal identity, right? So that's part of what I'm bothered by this discussion. So
if you can't have a discussion about free speech on a university campus, then I guess you can't have one, because that's supposed to be where they happen, isn't it?
I agree with you. I think that is a problem. What I'm trying to say is that, you know, those issues came up around issues of someone who was pro-Israel who wanted to come onto a campus. Those things are political. My identity, my personal identity, my gender identity is very separate from my political identity. And so it's very strange to have this to be where we're going to plant the flag and say, enough with this crazy political correctness. You don't get to choose your pronouns.
I thought
it seems trivial to me.
I thought it was an axiom, say, of feminism, for example, that the personal was political. And isn't that that's a famous phrase, the personal is political.
Okay, the personal is political when someone is attacking you on a basis that is personal and that you can't change about yourself. That is political, and that's when people sometimes become politicized, is when they realize that no matter what they do in the world, there will be people who will continue to attack them on racist grounds, on gender and sexual violence grounds, and that's why people start to fight back, and that's why people object.
And your attempts to regulate my language use, and
I don't care about your language use. I care about the safety of the people who are being harmed.
I know people who make your kinds of arguments are always concerned with other people's safety.
I'm concerned with my own safety. Just so that people are aware, my physical, emotional life and livelihood is at risk from being here. And that's not true of everyone.
In comparison to mine, say.
I don't know about yours because
yes,
I don't live your life.
You know perfectly well about mine.
I do know that you have tenure and that's one of the major ways that you're able to do this. But I just want people to be aware that trans and gender diverse communities, and especially people of color, are being targeted and threatened physically. So free speech is a great idea and equality is a great idea, but we actually can't have those conversations when people are not even able to be present.
Jordan, let me read this tweet to you and I'll get you to respond to it because I think it's instructive of the conversation that just took place between the two of you. Can someone please explain to Jordan B. Peterson that there's a difference between freedom of speech and freedom from consequence? Do you agree there's a difference?
Well, certainly there's a difference.
And are you prepared to suffer the consequences that society may deem you need to suffer because of your views?
Yes, I'm prepared to do that.
What does that entail?
Are you open to learning?
Well, hang on.
That's not the question.
Hang on, that wasn't the question.
That's
right.
Well, so what am I willing to do? Well, I think that the Ontario Human Rights Tribunal is probably obligated by their own tangled web to bring me in front of it. If they find me, I won't pay it. If they put me in jail, I'll go on a hunger strike. I'm not doing this. And that's that. I'm not using the words that other people require me to use, especially if they're made up by radical left-wing ideologues. Now, if our society comes to some sort of consensus over the next while about how we'll solve the pronoun problem, let's call it, and that becomes part of popular parlance, and it seems to solve the problem properly without sacrificing the distinction between singular and plural, and without requiring me to memorize an impossible list of an indefinite number of pronouns, then I would be willing to reconsider my position. But I'm also partly opposed to this because it's been made mandatory and has the whole weight of the law behind it. It's like, this is a very bad idea. I believe this is a very bad idea. And I believe that the reason this has caused so much noise, tremendous amount of noise, tremendous amount of attention on YouTube, is because there are things that are at stake in this discussion, despite its surface nature, that strike at the very heart of our civilization. That's what I believe.